Welcome to Locals Only. We're just two class clowns that got themselves elected and turned our small town upside down. We are your hosts, Rich Wood and Jared Gray. Join us as we pull back the curtain on local politics, stir the pot on community folklore, address the great assumption epidemic on local social media groups, and serve up a generous portion of laughs. Buckle up, Eagle Mountain. It's going to be a wild ride.
Oh man, here we go. Man, I'm excited for this one, and I get a kick out of what you say about the local governments and what's on social media. Here in a minute, we're going to get to talk to Skyler Beltran, and I love this that came out about one of our other elected officials. I think I say his name, but here, hold my drink. This is going to get good, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to do some laughing and have some fun. But here comes, first of all, our calendar updates. The coming up and whatnot. Of course, this is Pioneer Week. If this gets released before it's over, Pioneer Week, Days of 47 celebrations going on in Salt Lake. The rodeo at the State Fair Park, the parade downtown on the 24th.
When does that all start? That starts tonight, right?
Yeah, it starts today. Yeah, Tuesday. I already worked the slack. I'm still wearing my Days of 47 shirt here. The rodeo started this morning. The first actual performance is tonight at 8:00. And then, like I said, tomorrow morning, slack again at let's see, slack's at 10, I think. My meetings start like 7:30, so production
Right.
stuff. But I think the slack starts at 10, and then rodeo again at 8:00. And of course, fair activities going on all day, ribs and rodeo. But I don't want to forget about some of the other ones too.
Ribs and rodeo, that sounds awesome.
Oh,
like
dude,
a barbecue?
It's so it's kind of the VIPs. You get a table inside, and they give you barbecue ribs, and of course it has box seats. That's kind of the best package for the rodeo.
That sounds great.
Also, other rodeos going on. Spanish Fork, of course, going on. The Fiesta Days down there, and Ogden's going on right now. Pioneer Days. So lots of good stuff and parades going on. Summer Bash and Laser Show here in Eagle Mountain, the 26th at 4:00 from 4 to 10.
And if you've never been to that laser show before, it's something my kids really love. We kind of started that when we were in the pandemic, and people couldn't really get together in the way we wanted to during the 4th of July. And so we came up with our own laser show, and we kind of carried that tradition. That's a fun one. They do it to different types of music, and they usually have some live bands, so it'll be a fun thing.
Yeah, that's a super fun event. That's one of the ones, of course, I've talked about out on the campaign trail about bringing back the fireworks, because we did away with it for a long time. And that's one thing that I've really enjoyed is some of those events. The fireworks are awesome. And this is another one that's going to be fun. Big thanks to our event staff, Dawn and her team. They do a great job. The other one more to think about is coming up. It's back to school clothing swap, live music, and come out to the park. And let's see, that's from 6 to 8 at Corey Ride Park as well. And
and the band is Sonic Duke, which is a bunch of local principals. So,
oh, no kidding! I didn't know that.
That'll be kind of a cool thing where you get to see some people that you'll see at school. But yeah, they have this. I've heard them before. They're pretty good.
Oh, that's awesome! Yeah, and look, your kids, all of our kids. Of course, I'm an empty nester now, but they grow out of their clothes. So take the old stuff, get some new, and let's pass it around and get some use out of this.
Kids kind of do that nowadays too, where they like to have different options with their clothes, and so to have some kind of swaps where you can take the stuff that you've got that you're kind of tired of and find something you aren't. What a great idea. I think that's a great idea. So,
yeah, way good. I'm going to tell you, we always, when we were younger, we thought, oh, there's no way that bell bottoms will ever come back. That's what our parents did, right? And I remember being younger thinking that nothing would come back. And even my daughters are wearing my old camouflage now. I'm like, I wouldn't even wear that anymore.
my brother said to me not too long ago, it's probably in the last year, he goes, my kids got into my closet and grabbed my old soccer shoes. And I'm like,
oh my God.
Like your Sambas? Like your Adidas Sambas? He's like, yeah. Now I see them everywhere. I mean, they've started making them and selling them all over again. But yeah, everything kind of goes in a circle. So
what I thought,
would be maybe one of those, right?
I thought camouflage was just for hunting. Heck, it's everyday clothes now. I love it.
Hey, you'll be happy to know Dawson's got himself a Browning camouflage hat. He's trying to ask me, does camouflage go with with black. I said, camouflage goes with everything. That's the beauty of camouflage.
Oh, that's and especially when you got a Y on the top, for the Cougars.
Oh, gee.
I've got a camouflage Cougar hat. I'm going to get him.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We're excited to have our segment on guest conversations with people in the local government, education, business, and the state. Today we have with us Commissioner Skyler Beltran from the Utah County Commission. And we wanted to have an opportunity to kind of get to know Commissioner Beltran and then ask some questions that are significant here in the county. So we thought it might be kind of fun to share maybe something funny, like a funny experience. We were talking just before we got started, and Skyler said he doesn't think he's got anything funny about him. And Jared and I were talking earlier about this. And tell him what you said, Jared.
About me being funny?
Yeah.
I said I don't have a shady past, even though we're going to get into that.
Well, I promise. Like, we've become kind of serious, unfortunately. Like, when you're in government, like, it kind of brings out a kind of a serious side. And I'm sure you feel that too, where the issues that you're dealing with are kind of funny. And the reality is I'm not like that at all. Most of the people on the city council have no idea that I'm just a clown.
So I'm usually, I'm a pretty good prankster, and everything I say is usually sarcastic, and it's very rarely serious. But like you said, we get in these situations and we have to, get a little bit more in tune and a little bit more serious. So it's kind of fun, and we got to play around. And I know one thing about Skyler, as I got to know him a year or two ago, but you wouldn't know this, but he's a writer for the Lehigh Free Press, right?
Oh, yes. I'd spent a lot of years doing that.
And I guarantee you've had some funny stories, and I don't want to get into the politics side of this because it's funny, but holy smokes, Chris Karn told me the other day that he's the next mayor of Saratoga. He said, you thought Eagle Mountain's politics was heating up. Hold my drink and watch this is what Lehigh. So tell us what's going on over there in Lehigh in the press, man. You guys are, you're heating it up, huh?
Yeah. Well, we're fortunate in Lehigh to have a local paper. I spent a lot of 6 years there covering government and politics, and I can't do it anymore, obviously, with this conflict. But our paper is a good resource for people, and local races always get a little spicy, as you guys know. And we have two city council people, running for mayor, as you guys have 3. So that's a dynamic that most cities typically don't see. And everyone, I feel like, in Lehigh and in Eagle Mountain gets along and are friends. And it's hard to run a campaign, without any kind of little jab here and there. So we're getting to that point in Lehigh for sure, with 2 weeks to go.
We've run out all the nice words, huh?
Yeah.
It is hard when you're trying to draw a contrast between you and the competition. It's really hard for it to not come off as pointing out people's faults. But the reality is there's going to be some of those things when you're running to say how you would do things differently and why they should choose you over another individual. There's going to be a comparison and contrast.
Yeah, we always tend to take it personal, and just like you said, you have to have a contrast. It doesn't mean I don't like you. Doesn't mean I didn't. I'm trying to throw you under. I just would have did it differently, and we need to be better at having those conversations without feeling personal, without feeling like it's divisive. It's just clear. This is A and this is B. I'm going to go route A. You're going to go route B. Which one do you guys like better?
Hey, so watch this, Rich. You ready? Hold my drink, will you? Hey, Skyler. So who you picking for mayor?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that! We lost his audio.
I'll give you
a tough one. It's a very tough, and I've told them I'm staying out of it. And I will be very interested to see who comes out of the primary.
Yeah, what about? I'll give you another softball. What about the council?
Yeah, the council's tough as well. I love the 2 Republican endorsed candidates. I think are wonderful newcomers, Rachel Freeman and James Harrison. I've been very impressed with both of them. We have a lot of good quality candidates on our council. I left our Q&A last week very impressed. That has not always been the case. I feel like municipal races, sometimes it's very clear These people know what they're doing. They have, the chops to do it, and these people don't, and maybe they can learn. And this field of candidates has many people who could absolutely be very successful on our council.
That's actually a good thing, though. That means that there's, people don't have to stay in for 2 and 3 and 4 terms.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge learning curve.
And we have an open seat, so that'll be an interesting dynamic with Councilman Condi's running for mayor and had to give up his seat. So there's an open seat, and that always brings out some surprises.
We have that same potential. If two of the council members, one of the council members that are running for mayor that are already in midterm, will have to go through that same process of appointment and interviews and all that. Well, let's jump into some of the questions. We didn't share our funny stories. I'm going to give you a quick one. So my family knows this about me. When I wake up from a nap, I'm a little delirious, actually. And I've done some pretty funny things over the years. One of the things that's funny, though, is I eat in my sleep, and I don't know that I'm eating in my sleep. And one time we had a family party, and I made brownies. I laid down, took a nap. It was like a Saturday or Sunday, whatever it was. Took a nap, and I don't remember any of this happening. But at some point during that time frame of me being asleep, I got up, and I basically just reached with my hand and grabbed right down the middle of the brownies and ate whatever, and went back to sleep, and I don't remember any of it. So my brothers call me. I'm late. I've overslept or whatever, and I'm hurrying, just frantic, trying to get ready to get over to my parents' house for this family party. And I go in the bathroom, and I'm covered in chocolate.
And at least you hope.
Well, I don't know what's going. Yeah, that's kind of the point, right? I don't know what's happened, but I'm just like freaked out, and you can't not go like this and make sure, But I ended up realizing what I'd done or whatever. But my family laughed pretty hard at that. Like, I mean, the brownies were not usable for anybody else. I'd ruined the whole pan of them. But I've had many instances that have happened like that over the years that I told my family, like, you guard me when I'm asleep. Don't let me get out of the couch or whatever. If you see me stand up, make sure I'm awake. Jared, what was yours? Tell us.
That's awesome.
We'll move on.
Look, I'm going to tell you a teaser. I said a minute ago I don't have a shady past, but for some reason I always find myself dealing with the law. I'll just say it that way. But I want to get into these questions. So when we record the next segment, I'm gonna throw a little bit out there.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and we have some questions that we kind of asked Commissioner Beltran previously to give him an opportunity to kind of prepare, kind of where he stands on some of these things. But the first one was, we wanted to know if there was a form of government that he supports for the Utah County government. What would that be? And if any, if it was a change from our current 3-commissioner format, what form would he be supportive of if we were to change?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that's frequent here. And I've changed my opinion from when I ran to now. So, I love that, because it's always hard to go, tell us a time when you changed your mind. Well, this is a really good example. So I ran thinking five part-time was probably the best route. From several reasons, and as you guys know, in Eagle Mountain, you sometimes feel neglected, and other areas also feel neglected, and it's hard to balance so much of our county. We have Eagle Mountain to Alpine, Lehigh to Santaquin, and the issues of Santaquin are nothing like the issues of Lehigh, and the issues of Alpine are not anything that Eagle Mountain deals with. So that is a challenge. So couple things I've switched to. I'm not quite sold on the fact of a needed change, actually, now. But I will tell you, the biggest thing I've changed on is part-time to full-time. This role absolutely needs to be full-time. And I'll tell you why. The delegation of duties to staff is a big, big concern of mine. And we see it in cities, as you guys see in city council. Some cities let their city manager be, for lack of a better word, God, in my opinion. They let them do anything and everything. They make all the decisions, and council's not involved. And that's not the system that we have, and it should not be the way that it's designed. And so I fear that if we were to move to a part-time format, that we will delegate too many duties to staff. And, there's so much importance in being able to hold people accountable. That's my frustration is as a voter, I can't hold city managers accountable. I can hold the mayor accountable. I can hold my city council members accountable. And the public can hold me as a commissioner accountable and not the county administrator and not the administrative staff. They won't even know who they are. So I think a big switch for me has moved from part-time to full-time. Now,
let me just ask you a follow-up question to that, because I tend to agree with what you're saying. And I think you bring up a good point with why there are elected officials and why we don't just have hired staff to run the city.
Yeah.
Well, to me, there's a couple of things that kind of stand out with that. First of all, if they don't live in the city, which is often the case, do they really have a vested interest in the outcome? That'd be kind of the first question. The second one is one of the reasons that there are elected officials, and that they're there to look over and watch over to make sure that everything is on the up and up. To some degree, they are sheepdogs to make sure that the decisions are in the best interest of the city, not the individual, which is, that's a difficult subject to have a discussion about sometimes, because staff feel like you're saying that they're bad, or that they're going to try to do something underhanded or whatever. But that's just the world we live in. The reality is they are vulnerable without the checks and balances you've talked about. So continue. I just kind of wanted to maybe insert that with that.
No, that's great. Well, and you guys are one of the few that has a full-time mayor, and that absolutely is an advantage. It needs to be, an engaged. There's different levels of engagement between people. We see that in your own council. We see that in our commission. We see that in every level. But to have a full-time mayor in such a thriving, growing city is so much of an advantage. There's so many meetings that happen during the day. There's so many relationship building things that need to be done. They're able to prioritize the city over their personal job. At the end of the day, everyone needs to support their families. So, right. if it's me deciding between, a work meeting that I have to make, or a random, MAG UTA meeting at 11 o'clock in the afternoon, which one are you going to choose? You're going to choose your job. And so when we elect somebody whose full-time job is to dedicate to this public service, we get a much better product. And so I think it's great you guys have a full-time mayor.
See, and I actually had to answer that question. I'm running for mayor, as you know, and it's people ask me about that full-time and why can't we get by like Saratoga? And I said the difference is you're going to give all that power to a staff member. Wouldn't you rather that I'm there full-time, yet that I am able to get paid? And part of this has to do with, well, you don't have time because you're a hunting guy or whatever. I'm says, because that's my job. If I had this job, I wouldn't have to do the other job, right? So that's had to get answered quite a bit in my camp. But a couple of questions or comments that I think, first of all, before you were elected, that's one of the conversations I specifically had with you, is to make sure that you're willing to make that change. And I wonder if the difference is in the change is you keep saying 5 part-time. And I've advocated, I don't care if it's full-time or part-time. If we have 5 full-time, I'm okay with that, because I agree that it's a job that I want someone there full-time that can dedicate that, especially in a county of our size. The flip side of that, 2 buddies that, Brandon's a nice guy, and some of the, Amelia too. All you guys got to do is be buddies, and all of a sudden decisions are just made by a couple of buddies. Where you have 5 people, it makes the body a little bit more. It takes 3 votes, and it creates a little bit more of a objective outcome. So look, I'm okay with 5 full-time. So why not that?
Yeah. So that's great. And that was going to be my next. And to your point, there's several efficiencies with 5. 2 right now is a quorum. And as you
can't talk to anybody.
Yeah. You and Rich can communicate, no problem. But if you get a third, you're now a quorum. We don't have that luxury. We're in a quorum by just 2, one-on-one conversation. So there is that aspect as well.
It almost makes you peerless, which is hard.
Yeah.
If you don't have the ability to bounce those ideas off of somebody who actually understands all of the elements, that could be a very lonely place to be.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And ultimately it will be a cost. It will be a cost thing that for the public to determine if they're willing to pay for that extra You know, I don't know if I'd call it representation. That's fluid, but if they want to pay for that, but I do know that it is in the works. Currently, state code only allows for part-time if you have more than 3. And so there will be some legislative edits this January, February to allow counties to move to 5 or 7 with full-time. So
do you know who's working on that? Is that something you can share?
It's in the interim session. So they discussed it last month's interim session in the legislature. And so I would anticipate all of them were shocked that was even a thing. They're like, how did the code even only allow? Like, why so scripted? And so that's an administrative fix that they're going to change.
Who's sponsoring that bill?
It's in political subdivision committee right now. So it may come out as a committee bill. I know Chairman Dunnigan, and he chairs the political subdivisions, and Galen Benyon is a Democrat in Salt Lake. Both of them are very passionate about changing us, which frustrates me. That's another thing. I don't need Salt Lake people telling me and my county what we need to do. So I do push back on them a little bit because they just sit there in Salt Lake and tell us what we're doing when they probably have never even visited us or have any idea how we operate. And so they are very passionate about it. Commissioner Gardner's very passionate about changing it. So I would anticipate some changes heading to the voters next year. And 5 full-time is probably where I lean at this point as well.
So I'm going to say I agree with that. And I'm going to tell you that I hope we can advocate for that, because anytime you tell the voters that this is going to cost more, that might be the case in San Juan County or, I'm trying to think in Millard. But look, where we're at and the population we have, to have 3 people that are really making the type of decisions for our entire county, I would rather have 5, which kind of brings me to another topic that's not really on our list. But Utah County, for a long time before you got there, had kind of bragged about not, 20 plus years of not raising taxes. And obviously you and I both know it takes getting in this chair to understand what that really means. But, we need to be a little more responsible. And of course, the voters voted it down. And I think we need to have those little small incremental raises to get caught up, because we are way behind right now at Utah County.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, there's been 2 tax increases in the last 6 years. So the catch-up, I would say the catch-up is there. But to your point, it could easily fall again. The county's done a really good job of moving to the 21st century. There's a lot of things where I'm in meetings and they're like, we just started that 4 years ago. And I'm like, that's crazy. And I was in a conference in Philadelphia last weekend, and I was talking to Commissioner Crofts in Davis County. And to hear how they operate and how we operated 5 years ago, the efficiency loss is insane. And so when we talk about spending a little bit more, county administrator is an example. Ezra Nair's our county administrator. They hired him 3 years ago, we'll say $150,000. His position absolutely saves this county 5x 150,000.
Yeah.
And so, it's those kind of conversations where we may, it looks like we're spending 150,000 more, but how much is he saving us in the future? How much is he saving us on day to day? How much are they increasing the accessibility and efficiency to the public? Even if they're just coming to record a document, some of those things could have been so difficult 5 years ago, and it might be smooth now. And so to your point, yes, there has to be incremental changes. I mean, inflation is what it is. Police is what it is. Our 80% of our budget is public safety. So, it's either lose all of our officers to Riverton, or we have to give $2,000 raise every year. I mean, it's a struggle. And of course, we all work to find the balance, but it is very expensive to operate for sure.
Hey, and by the way, shout out to that Utah County Sheriff's Department that supports us out here in Eagle Mountain. What a great group of good officers, man. They're awesome.
And I saw you guys hired 2 more last week, so that's great news.
Yep. We hired 2, and we need probably 7.
Of course.
Yeah.
So
Jared, let's move on to the next question, shall we?
That's where I was just going. So here's a question for you, Skyler. Speaking of kind of representation and the forms of government, you're the closest thing Eagle Mountain's ever had. And I used to talk a lot about, not an exact science, but besides Amelia, who's now moved up Nobody's really represented Utah County on the county commission north of Provo almost. A lot of South County people have been in that seat. But now you guys in Lehigh. So here's my question specifically for North Utah County. What's your biggest top concern for Utah County as a whole? But then how are you planning to support and address the explosive growth here in the north part of the county, northwest and north?
Yeah. Yeah, so I take great pride in representing Eagle Mountain because I am on the northwest side. I'm west of the freeway in Lehigh, and do all my shopping in Saratoga Springs. So
thank you for those tax dollars.
Yeah, and my son has flag football practice at Quarry Ride, and so I am definitely, I drive our roads. I shop at Walmart. I won't shop at I shop at the same Walmart as you now. I won't. In a couple months, you'll have your new one. But I take great pride in exposing myself to the community, especially in our northern part. People don't understand what we've been through the last few years, and you talk about the biggest problem. It has to be our advocacy on the Hill. As a county, we do not do a good job of collectively organizing. Our Utah County Caucus does not organize as well as Davis and Weber County. And that's somewhat of a personality thing, and you can say there's the benefit of not groupthink and those kind of things, but we really have had a disadvantage for many years. We just lost Jefferson Moss to Casey Snyder. That's a tremendous step back for us. And the average citizen doesn't know that dynamic, and so when you talk about the biggest issue I lose sleep over, it's advocacy on the Hill. And we know the growth we've experienced because we drive on the roads. We see our schools busting at the seam. We experience these things. If you don't see it every day, you will not understand. And so our top issue is allocating funds to our area. We got $1.4 billion, which was a huge win. And I truly believe Mountain View Corridor and 2100 will alleviate a lot of problems. The issue is we may alleviate traffic for a year, 2, 3 years. And then everyone's going to say, oh, it's not that bad. Let's build another 10,000 units. And then we're right back where we are. So we have to continue to advocate for those dollars and not say, well, thanks for the 1.4 billion, but we actually need another 1.4 billion. Yeah. And so that's our top issue we're facing.
I like that you were talking about the kind of working together thing. I think you are probably aware of this. Jared and I, Chris Karn, Jim Miller, were involved in getting all of the northern Utah County cities to groupthink. We'll say it like that. All of the city councils and the mayors, basically from Cedar Hills all the way out to Cedar Fort and Fairfield, to talk about the school district split. And one of the things that we learned in that process is what kind of power there is when we are all working for the same goal. And to your point, I think an opportunity might have been missed in bringing the county commissioners into that conversation, and even reaching down further south, all the way to the very south border of Utah County, to be able to say, okay, what else can we work on together? What are some things that we have common goals for, or that we're feeling common pains? And I think you nailed one of them. One of those things for sure is housing, where there's a state push to add more houses, but they don't want to have a conversation about impact. They want to talk about, the things that get people elected, and that's we're going to provide housing for everybody. It's easy to make that kind of a statement without looking at what the actual key factors of affordability are. None of those have to do with the cities or the counties. They have to do with the market. But if we talk about those kinds of things, you don't get elected on those kinds of things. So I like that you're talking like that, because I think that there's some other advocacy that needs to happen moving forward if the governor is going to push for 30,000 units a year, as an example. That there needs to be real answers about how they're going to address the impact that creates on roads, on sewer, on water allocation, and also the one that no one ever talks about. How many schools does that create? I mean, we just ignore that and say, well, the school districts will figure that out. But the reality of it is, if you're putting in, 1,000 homes anywhere, you're creating multiple elementary schools right off the bat. and you're automatically impacting the middle school and high school. And they're not having those kind of conversations. It's as if they're unaware the impact that decision makes.
Well, and to caveat on that too, Skyler, that maybe you can touch on, I'm sure you saw the press release that came out in the news last week that Eagle Mountain's the fastest growing city in all of Utah, and then Saratoga was second, right? And I think Lehigh third. So with that growth, we're adding 6,000 people a year. Was the number. So again, how do we balance that?
That's
what
low.
Are we doing?
If we're at 1,500 and if there's 1,500 units and our average is 4.8, it's a lot higher than that.
Well, that was 4.3, so it's going to be just a little over 6,000, 6,500 maybe. But Skyler, what do you think about, like Rich is saying, the state and wanting to put more housing on us, and yet no real infrastructure to speak of? Yeah. I mean, 1.4 billion, right? But that's little too. That we needed last year. Now 6,000 more every year, right?
Yeah. It comes down to, there's always a penalty for, we hear if you don't do your 5, housing innovation, topic, you're going to lose this. Well, why are we not being rewarded for actually doing the work? And that's been a big thing for me. As a Lehigh resident, we have absolutely in good faith done 5, affordable housing KPIs and, done them well and, helping the community, but we don't get any reward for that. All we hear about is, well, you'll lose transportation funding if you don't do this or this. And so I think...
Doesn't that make you a little crazy when you hear that, by the way? Because you've already been taxed for it. I mean, the taxes have already come out of, the gas and your registration. So we've already been taxed on those things for roads. And they say, oh, by the way, you've already been taxed. Your citizens have been taxed. But the only way you're going to get those funds is to do something that's unrelated to that.
Yeah. When something your community doesn't want, in every case. And it's, we see communities like Alpine, Highland, Mapleton, how are they not doing their 5 steps and have not seen a consequence? So, there is a little bit of a inequity there, but I think it comes down to we need to reward people who are taking the brunt, and there is absolutely no bigger epicenter than that entire corridor of East down on Redwood Road. But in Saratoga, that is the epicenter of all growth for the state. Of course, St. George and Washington County is booming, but there is no epicenter for growth bigger than that, and I don't think we're getting the love that is required for that kind of growth and impact. And so it all comes back down to the legislature, and we have to do a better job at getting our caucus together. If you had Utah County vote as a block, we would control every single bill. We have the majority of the majority. We have every single member of our legislature is a Republican, and we have the most Republicans of any other county. So we have the majority of the majority, and we need to start using it. So you're getting people together is great. Stephanie Grecius, Representative Grecius, is our caucus leader. She's trying to, build a better rapport between our caucus and host events and keep people together. But it all really comes down to we need to have better advocacy with our legislators.
So
I'm going to roll into that next question, Jared, because we're already running short on our time.
Sorry, I can talk policy all day.
No, I'm telling you, we love talking about this, but we do want to kind of hit a couple of things. So we've been talking about roads, and there's a multitude of ways that those are funded. One of which is MPOs, Metropolitan Purchase Organizations, and we belong to one called MAG, Mountain Land Association of Governments. Now, this has been kind of a hotly debated issue in Utah County about how those funds are rated, how they're dispersed, who gets first dibs. And I think that even the state representatives have weighed in the last couple of years about how we can create a more equitable use of those funds where we're not allowing a group to make those decisions that benefit to, kind of maybe larger population areas, and those that are experiencing extensive growth don't have the opportunity at the same funds. What's your feeling on that? You're in that voting block, and how do you feel like that needs to be improved?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question and very complex. because there's so many political nuances to it. But yes, I am a MAG member, and I actually, I'm approaching 1 year. We have some improvements that can be done in that process, in that organization. But I'll tell you one thing that matters the most, and it's engagement. All of these are such important meetings, and we lack the engagement of those that should be participating. I won't name names. There's mayors I have never seen, not one single time, attend their MAG meeting. And that's a frustration of mine, because this is a very influential, very important organization by state statute, administering millions and millions of dollars. And so we kind of lack that engagement. There's some mayors who are there every single time, very engaged, and I'll let you figure out who gets most projects. And so that needs to be on the forefront of anyone that we're electing as our representatives, is engagement. I flew to Philadelphia on Thursday for National Association of Counties, and I had to Zoom in my Uber, on the way, and spent 3 hours on the MAG call, because I do not miss MAG meetings. These are very important meetings, and those who show up make decisions. And I'll give you an example. There was a project that was approved in a central city, and what had happened was the project wasn't able to happen, and they wanted to reallocate funds from that project for a different project. So they brought it to MAG to get a vote. We were throwing money at something that was not going to be a regional improvement, that was not going to help like the original plan was going to do, but this city felt obligated to those funds. So I made the motion to, 3 or 4 months in as a commissioner of MAG, I made the motion to deny the project. And you should have seen the jaw of every single person in the room drop, because they didn't. How dare anybody would ever deny a project? Well, I'm like, we all deny projects in our roles all day long. Every week there's projects we don't approve. Just because it's on the agenda doesn't mean it goes through. And everybody's jaw dropped. And guess what? Every single person except the 2 representatives from that city voted with me to deny the project. Yeah. But I can tell you, if I didn't speak up and motion to deny, guess what? That project would have approved unanimously.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally
I've
agree
seen
with that. That you have to have somebody that's willing to stand out, to allow other people to have the courage to be able to do what everybody knows.
And it wasn't a thing that even to me required courage. I shouldn't have bothered. It shouldn't have upset anybody. That was the thing. I'm like, this is such a basic item. We should just deny it and move on. It wasn't, to me, it wasn't even controversial that required someone to go, oh, I'm going to make some enemies here. But it requires you to be engaged and understand what we're doing, instead of let's rubber stamp everything. And it goes back to elected officials versus staff. Well, we get, presented these projects in the MAG meeting by staff who are, great staff members and experts in their field. But if we don't agree as an elected body, then we just need to deny it. And so it requires that additional engagement from everybody in MAG to kind of make some improvements. I will say, as far as cadence of what projects are getting funded, where dollars are going, is improving. It absolutely is improving. I think it was very political, years before I was there. And not to say I had anything to do with the change. I'm just saying, years ago, it was more political, and they are definitely trying. I've seen a conscious effort to make it data-driven. If the people are moving into Saratoga and Eagle Mountain, the money needs to go there. And if something is priority number 1 or 2, and now that Eagle Mountain has 15,000 more residents than they did 2 years ago when that priority was set, they may actually need to now be in the first priority. And that needs to be data-driven, and it hasn't been in the past. And so there is definitely improvements that are on the horizon to where we will see data-driven decisions and actually have changed our priority based on growth. And that will be key for Saratoga and Eagle Mountain.
So I think you just nailed some of the stuff that I was talking about a little while ago about representation, the 3 versus 5 members, is when I said I had seen a lot of the money going kind of south, old days like you talked about. And maybe not even, that's an unfair statement, just say money went south. But the representation, I think, somewhat influenced what you're talking about there. And it's getting better, but I also think the representation's getting better. So that's evening out. And with that, I want to throw another little question your way. speaking of money and the fact that we've got this one problem that sits right in the middle of our county when it comes to growth, and it's a great big blue water, body of water, if I can think and talk, a lake that sits right in the middle of it. So I want to know, both from the MAG and the funding perspective, but what you support or what do you know, and how do we get across the lake? And I do want you to touch on this too, because specifically American Fork, Lehigh, Saratoga, and Eagle Mountain, of course, our buddies that live out here with us in the valley, Cedar Fort and Fairfield. If we have all the money in the world, but yet we continue to just pinch down it and bottleneck in Lehigh or American Fork, you get on I-15, you can't go anywhere. The problem still exists. You can build as many roads as you want and still get I-15 and be stuck. So I've been working on some solutions that, and of course, this is something where Lehigh and AF might not agree. They want a lake shore crossing, and I'm saying more of a mid-lake crossing so that we don't get over on I-15 and just slow down again. So, I want your thoughts maybe on a mid-lake crossing. What's the feasibility, how you support it, and, where are we going? I do know, by the way, I met with UDOT the other day, and they're doing a $5 million study that's underway right now. It's a 24-month study. So, I understand all that, and I know that this might be a little premature, but why don't you give us your take and opinion on where we go?
So I want to talk about that study because I'm in that advisory or approval group that approved that study with all those those people, and it was $5 million appropriation from the state legislature. So another big win, and $5 million is not easy to come by. And so the first thing that study is going to do is tell us the feasibility of the lake, because we can understand and program for a lake crossing. If it's not feasible or it's $8 billion, well, it's never going to happen. So that the study is going to finally tell us, is this even feasible? Can we get down far enough in the rock to where we can build a bridge? And
well, just so you know, I did talk to this with UDOT as well, but Chris Karn and I work in the rodeo business with some guys that go under, and he also knows somebody in Vegas, but we're talking about boring under. So I hope that study also entails not just going over, but under.
Yeah. And a tunnel has been discussed as well. I know Congressman Owens likes that approach, and both of those will be. We have to know the geology of the lake. So that study's going to tell us the geology, because we need to know what's feasible, what's not. And then the next part of the study is several different roads. So mid-lake crossing is actually supported by everybody. So that's a big piece. Lehigh supports it, Saratoga supports it, Eagle Mountain supports it, American Fork supports it, the county supports it. So that is supported by all entities. So that's a big piece of the puzzle. Now we need to know if it will work. The second thing is a lot of studies, including Lehigh. They hired their own study, Health Engineering. Their study says even with the lake crossing, there must be a second east-west corridor. We probably can all say that's accurate. Maybe not in the imminent future, but in 20, 30 years, you would imagine that must be required. So that now leaves three things to be studied. First is the Lakeshore Freeway that Lehigh would like. Second is a Pony Express expansion, which Saratoga prefers. And then the third would be to expand Pioneer Crossing, which Saratoga is in favor of as well. Lehigh is adamantly opposed. So the study needs to tell us which of those three makes the most sense. It may,
and in which order, right? The reality is they could be all three necessary. Correct. Which one has the greatest impact first?
Correct. So the study needs to tell us the geology of the lake and the lake crossing, and then which of those, and then the priority of those makes the most sense. Feasibility wise, they don't consider finances like we would like. UDOT figures out the money after they've determined what the best project is. I don't really agree with that approach. I think the finances absolutely matters. If a project is $2 billion and one's $600 million, and the $600 million maybe solves it just a little bit less at a third of the cost, to me that should be a consideration in priorities. It's not the way UDOT functions.
Agreed.
And so that study will tell us which of those, and then the lake crossing. Then Lehigh has also got an appropriation for $4 million from Congress to study the Lakeshore Freeway in its own right. Saratoga is very frustrated with that because they think it may be biased or give data that goes only towards that project and not the other ones, including Mid-Lake. So in that meeting, we've kind of decided, let's let UDOT do their Pell program, and then Lehigh kind of hold off on that $4 million, and then let us deep dive with that $4 million once we get the initial study. So there is a lot of work going into this. The 2-year study is a very big frustration of mine, but it is what it is. There's so many hoops. I hate to say it is what it is, because I sit in these meetings and I'm like, why can't this be done in 3 months? And it's just not something that any of us are going to be able to do. And there is, more hoops than we understand. As you know, it's easier to be Monday morning quarterback, and then you sit here and you learned a lot of stuff that maybe you didn't understand. So I get that. The timing is a frustration. And like, I'm spending a lot of time right now on UTA and Eagle Mountain. I'm trying really hard to get some on-demand service to you guys, like really quick, like in the next 6 months. And, when we're working on these things and they tell me, well, it takes 8 months for that. And I'm like, well, I could actually do it on my own in like a month. So it is hard to wait so long. But, we screwed up. And 10 years ago, we should have been having these conversations. We should have had this study 10 years ago. We should have had all these cities together 10 years ago, and we didn't. So we have to start today.
One of the issues with that, though, is I think we do get the advantage of the Monday morning quarterback. And hopefully we're actually applying that knowledge to beneficial use. But one of the things, I think you nailed it right on the head when you were talking about the different scenarios, where Lehigh has this scenario, Saratoga Springs has this scenario, American Fork has this scenario. One of the benefits of what you were talking about is having UDOT do it, where they can come back and tell us this is the best scenario, is really the role that the state should be taking, instead of always putting us in this Hunger Games scenario all the time, where we're fighting amongst ourselves to try to protect houses from being knocked down, because that's really what it comes down to. I mean, we're talking about houses that previous city councils and mayors should have never, ever approved. They should have had the foresight of looking forward and saying, this will need to be a highway. Let's preserve this right of way. And the reality is that moment has passed now. And so UDOT will be in the very situation you're talking about, where they are likely going to do the very same things that they did with Bangerter Highway and they will eventually do with Legacy Highway, where they will have to come and knock houses down because the roads have to be expanded. And I appreciate you sharing that, though. I'm frustrated with the time frames too. And to be honest with you, Skyler, I don't believe them either when they say it takes this long. And I think those are some of those things that I would really like to press our state representatives, our county representatives, and municipal representatives to do it better than's been done. We can't just continue to accept that everything is 5 to 10 years, because what that does is it puts people in a perpetual state of frustration, where they feel like that they're not being heard, that nobody cares about the plight that they have when they're sitting on the roads for 45 minutes to an hour just trying to get home from an area that used to be 20 minutes away.
And 2 topics we covered today that absolutely apply to this: engagement of your elected officials, and number 2, elected officials versus staff. It really is a problem at all levels of our government. We cannot continue to delegate duties to staff. Staff does not have the accountability that we have as elected officials. We hold the purse strings. If I want something done, let me just use an example. If somebody in your parks department asks for something to get done to somebody else, it may not be a priority. It may come, in a month or 2. If Tom Westmoreland goes to a park staff member and goes, I need this done, guess what? It gets done. And so that has to be the way that we look at our government, is we cannot continue to give bureaucratic overreach to all of our institutions. We should be able to go to the legislature, run a bill and says, hey, Eagle Mountain needs this road next year, and this is how we're going to pay for it. That's not how we operate. I have to go ask somebody else who has not been elected, if it's even possible, how long it's going to take, when is it convenient for you, what is the red tape for this, maybe we don't agree with you on this. It's this huge entire bureaucratic red tape, and it's so frustrating on every single level. So those 2 things I want to hammer. We have to have engaged leaders, and we have to not continue to give power to unelected staff.
Preach it, brother, man. Amen. Holy smokes! Go King Skyler Beltran.
Yeah, we feel the
Holy
same way.
Smokes, that's awesome.
You know, in fact, I'm glad that you said that. That actually helps us with the segue to the next segment that we're going to talk about, the forms of government. We're going to go ahead and end this segment, though. We're really grateful to you taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk with us about some of these important subjects that really impact everybody in Utah County. Of course, the people that we're trying to reach out to are in northwest Utah County, to kind of give them a better access to some of the things that are going on, to give them another avenue to find out what is being done on their behalf by elected officials, and to bring some light to some of the things that are the most concerning to them. I appreciate your talking with us about the roads and how things are funded. Hopefully we'll be able to have you on at another time and have a more expanded discussion. But we thank you very much for your time today, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the county.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
All right. Thanks, man. Okay, sit tight.
All right. That was great talking with Skyler Beltran. That conversation actually kind of leads us into this next segment. I was grateful he kind of talked about the importance of elected officials, why you need to have elected officials and not just hired staff, and that our form of government in Utah, the two forms that are available, the reason that we use those and that we need to adhere to those. So the very first one, there's really just two options in Utah now. There used to be a couple others, but our state code has changed, and so there's only two. You have the council manager, so to speak, which is a 6-member or a 5-member, depending on the size of the town or the city, form of government, where you have 5 council members or 4 council members and a mayor. There are some cities that do have they have a 5-member council, one of which is the mayor, and they vote. There's only a couple of them that are that way. But so you have that form, and then the other one is a council mayor. And just, I want to be clear on this, just because it says council mayor, that doesn't mean that the other council or 6-member council doesn't have a mayor. They do. They just have different functions. So, Jared, why don't you lead us out and kind of tell us about the council form of government? And we're going to use a little analogy like a barbecue to kind of explain this.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think maybe a Freudian slip, but I just want to be clear. You said it was a council manager. That used to be a form that you still see in a few cities. I think the one that you were
that's the 6-member. That's the 6-member council.
Well, right. But I'm saying there was a different one before that was a council with a city manager. Then you have a council mayor, and then you have the 6-member. So that the 6 members different than the council manager from the old way of doing it, which just empowered the manager.
But they are basically married together, because you're going to have a 5-member or a 6-member council, and then a professional administrator or manager.
Correct. Depending on which one. This question actually came up the other day, and they said, why manager over administrator? And I said, well, it's kind of the function that they play. And so, but my point is that it was an actual form of government was the council manager, and then the
6-member,
which is a council with a manager. So
that's correct.
Just I wanted to make sure that the wording was right, because of the way you said that. But that's gone away. And like you said, the new form, 6-member council, and then the council mayor, which is something more like you'd see in Provo or something. So anyway, I'm going to read this right here. It's the classic council mayor form is what we're going to start with. It's like the mayor is the boss, basically. Think of it like a neighborhood with the most enthusiastic potluck organizer, who not only decides on the menu, but also oversees everything from who brings the casserole to who cleans up the inevitable spill of the Jell-O. Not around here, of course.
Right.
The mayor is the chief executive, making many of the key decisions and running the city's day-to-day operations. The city council acts more like a supportive neighbor who approves the budget for the barbecue, sets the rules about the type of equipment that can be used, and the rules about parking. Of course, we haven't had any of that lately, and the size of the event. But they don't really tell the potluck boss how to run the show. So I think, like you said, that's a great analogy about that. The mayor is kind of the one that, in this form, gets to execute and kind of run the show, right? Where the council just gets to say that it's okay whether he can run the show or not, or at least allocate money, right?
Yeah, so There's only a few cities in Utah that use this form of government, most of which are cities of the first class, so they're over 100,000. That's not the case in all cases. There are some smaller cities that have elected to go to that form of government, but basically the idea is that you have split the executive and the legislative authority. Now, there's going to be a lot of debate.
Does that include veto power?
So, yes, in this particular situation, with the mayor council form of government or council mayor, the mayor, because that executive authority has been split, has the power of veto.
See, so I wanted to point that out because I think that's really the key difference of what we're dealing with here is there is no veto power.
Yeah, so we'll get into the 6-member in just a second. But one of the other things I wanted to point out, it's a little tricky in Utah because of the way our state code is written. Now, I think people need to remember, first of all, municipal government, which is cities, towns, and county, are political subdivisions of the state, where it's different with the relationship of the federal government to the state. They're not subsidiaries of each other. They're separate entities, right?
They have their own constitution.
Correct. We don't have our own constitution. We do have our own code, but that code cannot supersede the state code or the state constitution. So we have to live within those boundaries that are given, even with the splitting of the council and the mayor, or the legislative and the executive branches. It does not have a clean split like everybody thinks that it does, because even in the other form of government, the city council has executive action still in the purchase of property and things of that nature that are executive functions. There's been a lot of legal opinions on this. There's been, both from BYU Law School and also the one at the University of Utah. I've read a number of those things where they seem to have the same kind of agreement that it's not as clean cut as just there's an executive branch and there's a legislative branch in municipal government. So let's talk a little bit about
Well, hold on. I was going to lead you into that. So watch this. What I was going to say is I used to really lean into the council mayor form of government because I liked the separation. As a constitutionalist, Tom, we'll talk about this a lot, Westmoreland, our current mayor, believes in the Constitution that there should be a separation of powers. So I really actually believed in that too, and that there should be a separation. But I've since learned that I really, really like the 6-member council. As long as we can stay in that form, it means decisions are made by the body and et cetera. So why don't you tell us about the 6-member form?
So the 6-member form, we'll go back to our analogy. We're back to the barbecue again. In a 6-member or a 5-member council, the council's the boss in this case. So they make all the decisions that have to do with the barbecue. The difference is what they do is they hire themselves basically an event planner, which is our city manager. And the city manager kind of takes the bulk of the decisions that need to be organized and reaching out and doing kind of all those works, kind of reaching back to what Skyler was saying in that previous segment about the time that the council has to be able to do all of those functions. You need help, but we need to be careful about how that's delegated. So in that 6-member council, that city manager plans those things, but reports back before taking action. He made a good point, and I get off our analogy a little bit with this in that discussion with Skyler, that sometimes the council is uninvolved by their own choice or by tradition, frankly, and the city manager becomes a king, essentially, with nobody that they answer to. And that's a dangerous place to be. And so it really is incumbent upon the city councils that are anywhere in the state of Utah that they fulfill their function of overseeing and being stewards of not just the budget, but also the decisions, and creating a scenario where the staff members are returning and reporting, but they're also executing the will of the council, not the other way around. So I think that kind of gives us kind of a basic layout of 6-member council is run by the city council and the mayor. That's why there's 6. So the mayor is a participant on the council, which means that the mayor is part of the discussion. The difference is the mayor does not vote. The mayor is a non-voting member unless there's a situation where you have a council member that may not be there and there's a tie. Other than
Only
that,
votes in the case of a tie.
Yeah. The caveat to that is there are some cities that have a 5-member where the mayor is one of the 5 members and is a voting member. So I just want to make sure we draw that conclusion.
So that is really the big difference. You have a 5-member council and a 6-member council, and they both have a mayor. In a 5-member form, the mayor is a voter. In the 6-member form, the mayor does not vote, except in the case of a tie.
So what's different with the 6-member council as laid out by the state and what we have?
What's different is what's laid out. I don't know. What are you asking?
So just that last section here where we talk about why we're different as a 6-member council from most other 6-member councils. We've laid out kind of what the state says. We start off where all the authority is contained in the council, executive and legislative. Why are we different?
Yeah, and by the way, I want to first of all say that's why I like that form of government, is because it means the decisions are made by a majority, and it's not one person like we talked with Skyler, where 2 people, if they were buddies, of course that creates a quorum, so they can't talk as much, but they can really move an agenda, and there's millions of people here in Utah County, and they could move an agenda forward with 2 people making decisions that affect all of us. So I like the idea of a little bit more checks and balances. So I'm going to go on with the analogy then and lay this out. In the 6-member council, it's council can elect to give some of the responsibility, and I'm going to tell you this happens here in Eagle Mountain. Some of the responsibility for the execution of the barbecue to the mayor, which means we delegate executive power. In the 6-member form, we hold the executive power, but we can delegate it for the mayor to carry out. And I think that's what you were getting at with your question. So as you can probably already see, that can cause confusion and frustration with the council, the mayor, and the manager who's in charge, the barbecue, and what decisions belong to who. That's the state. That's the state of Eagle Mountain's current 6-member council and some very old city code that delegated most of the executive authority to the town mayor before we became a city. Since then, the barbecue has been a mix of pizza, hot dogs, steaks, ribs, sandwiches, popsicles, artichokes, cauliflower, none of which are really excellent because they are each being decided by siloed conversation that the whole organization isn't privy to. So I'm going to tell you, out on the campaign trail, this is something that I've brought up a little bit. And of course, Tom and I talk openly about this. One thing that I talk about is unity and bringing us together and righting the ship and pointing us in the same direction. So I use the analogy of being on a boat. I think we've got the council going this way and the mayor going this way and the manager going that way and the staff going that way. And you kind of don't, because nobody really knows which direction we're headed because everybody kind of has a little piece of the authority, if you will. But it's really more about we've got to get on the same page and be going in the same direction with one mind in order for all of us to be effective. And I think that's what you had pointed out kind of in the analogy that right now we're a little bit everybody kind of thinks they're the ones that have the executive authority and everybody's including the attorneys sometimes. And it's just caused not really confusion, but it's made it to where we can't sync and get on the same page and work together.
Yeah. And I think there's a desire for that for the most part. There needs to be clear-cut line of authority. I mean, any organization needs to have that. You can't have, what's the old biblical saying, no man can serve 2 masters? I think that's evident because which one do you listen to when they have different viewpoints or different visions about where you're going to go? And I've seen businesses that have had partners where there's been 2 of them where they have equal say in something and they give different directions. And that creates chaos within the organization because who do you
Come on,
to?
Rich, follow the money. That's what you got to do. Follow the money.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The funny thing is it is funny. It's funny that people are saying that. We were kind of joking about that earlier, but nobody's getting rich in municipal government in Eagle Mountain.
Heck, half of what I had, most of what I've been paid as a council member is going right back into running to see if I can get the job again, right? I have to ask the people if I can go again. And shoot, the amount of money that we spend on signs and stuff.
Well, even just what you spend on going to events and gas and trying to be at different functions at the state and the county. Nobody's paying us to do those things. I mean, so
not only not paying, we pay out of pocket.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's people that probably reimburse
And you can take donations. I've noticed around here, at least in Eagle Mountain, there's it seems like nobody wants to take donations. It's kind of scrutinized. So of course, and rightfully so. But there are donations available, whether or not you choose to take them. But for me, I'm mostly just paying out of pocket. It's expensive, man. Let me tell you.
Well, I think people are nervous. I'm one of them, and I've had developers say, we'd like to contribute to your campaign, and I said, I appreciate the support, but how about if you just support us by coming and meeting with us and working with us? Because I don't ever want people to be able to scrutinize and say all the things that they're saying that just aren't true, period. But if you take a donation from somebody that they disagree with, then they're going to say you're bought. And I'm not bought by anybody. I mean, my campaign donations, you can go through and look at them, and it's just people. There's people who are trying to help me get here. I know you've been in that same situation, and I don't begrudge anybody else. The reality of it is it's expensive to run for a campaign. The money has to come from somewhere to be able to get your message out to the people. And I know all of the people who are running, and I would be shocked if any of them were in the pockets of anybody. And you can say that about the mayor. I mean, Tom and I disagree on a lot of things, but Tom isn't a decision maker. So at the end of the day, you can say he's bought, but so what? He doesn't vote on anything. He doesn't make any decisions. So, I mean, he can't, even if they bought him, what's he going to do with it? Come and tell us, hey, I think we ought to do this, and we say no. So I just think that it's funny that people are saying those kinds of things, and it's not founded in anything. They're not doing any research, because if they did their research, they'd find that exactly what they have been asserting is just wildly untrue and laughable, frankly. So
yeah, and it's kind of it's funny because even Brett and I have talked at times, and you and I too. But what we put ourselves through to beg to do a job, to just get yelled at and told how dumb you are.
Well, it's like that people tell you that you're corrupt and we ought to all be removed and that we're not actually doing anything. I'll tell you the thing for me, honestly, that's the kind of stuff that's just like, man, that sucks. With all the work and the time and the effort that we put in for people who won't even come and engage with us, that won't even do their research to see what we've been doing, to make a statement like that, especially when there's very little thanks for doing what we're doing. Those are the kind of things that kind of bums you out a little bit. You're like, man, that sucks. That sucks that they aren't recognizing the blood, sweat, and tears that are being poured out on their behalf.
Well, and I think the pressure we're under, because I know for me, look, I know every decision I make, and I can't make any decision on my own, but every vote I cast that's going to result in a decision, that real lives are affected, right? People, a simple example, I mean, there's going to be something in your backyard that you didn't want, but somebody else did want it. And so here I am, the one saying, some people want it, some people don't, and I've got to decide. And it affects people. And if you said yes or no, it's going to affect them. And yet we're the ones that have to carry that burden. And I'm proud to do so, but at the same token, the abuse and the scrutiny, right, that comes back, and it comes with the job. But I'm really honored to been able to do it for
me too,
for the years. But at the same token, man, there's a lot of pressure, and I especially don't want anybody to think that we take any of it lightly, because we definitely we want to do what's best for the community, and that's our job, to really scrutinize that and try to find that middle ground, I guess.
Well, and if people want to go check me on this, you'll be able to find that in many, many city council meetings. But the thing that matters to me, and I feel like I can speak for most of the council here, we really care about the quality of life of the people who live here. And it's not just now, but preserving a quality of life in the future. And in that process, I mean, there's a lot of fights that we're fighting that you guys don't even know about, that are with the state, that are with the county, that are with MAG, that are with our own staff, frankly. To Skyler's point when we were talking, I mean, there's things that you disagree with all the time, and there's constant battles where you're in a constant state of contention. It'd be great if we could get the support of our citizens to recognize we're literally doing this for you. There's no real benefit to us in this. It's something that we're doing because we care about this community. We live here. We want it to be this quality of life we've all enjoyed. We want to preserve it. And we don't want to kowtow to everything that the state yells at us and threatens us to do, so that people at the state can get rich. So,
and it's interesting.
We've run out of time, Jared. I think we're there, but why don't you wrap us up with your comment? And I think you got some stories you want to tell us quickly.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say it's interesting because you kind of have to compete, if you will, for the job. And I'm going to tell you, there's 5 mayoral candidates and 6 council candidates. And no matter who gets on there, I guarantee you every one of them are in it for the right reason, wanting to do what's best for the city, at least in their view. And that means we're all going to come at it a little different. Every one of us might do it differently, but it's the intent in their heart, I think, is in the same place to make our city a better place. So I'm really proud of that. So, all right, fine. Now you're going to make me tell a story that I should probably better left alone. But
yeah. Let's hear your funny story. Something about you.
So listen, I said I don't have a shady past, but for some reason I find myself surrounded by police officers often. I want to be clear. I've never been charged with a felony. I've never been convicted of anything, but I've never even been charged. So I am not a troublemaker. But it's Rich told me not to say this. I'm going to say it anyway. I even had a arrest warrant just a month or two ago, and this is funny because I was at city council meeting, and the reason I found out is my tax return didn't come back, and I was like, well, why didn't we get a tax return? And it was because they confiscated it for the warrant in a different part of the state. Doesn't matter. But I went to the judge, and of course I got thrown out. It was kind of bogus. But the funny part was I asked Marcus, and he's like, they'd never do that. It was a code violation, by the way, in a different city. And they said, that's not how they do it. They do a bench warrant or what. I said, no, it's an arrest warrant. So apparently they were hunting me. But that one wasn't the story, but that is a funny one. Literally because I own property in a different city, and they said there were some weeds on it. But the funny part was the weeds were actually on the city part of the property, not my property. So anyway.
Oh, man. That's a can of worms, huh?
We don't want to go there. Hopefully our code enforcement's not doing that. But I go to Mexico every year. I've been going for quite a few years with my work. Some of my meetings I've participated online through. I've been down in Mexico, and every year when I cross the border, I buy a lottery ticket. And I always tell everybody it's because if I come across and win, it means I made it back, right? So it's kind of like winning the lottery just to get back across. And for me, that's rang true because I'm not kidding you. I think 8 out of 10 years I've been down there, every time I cross the border, I have to go sit in the holding cell. So one time it was for I had some shed horns. We pick up horns, bring them home, use them for decorations. Well, I just had them sitting on the seat. Sure enough, I was coming through the border, and man, they threw me in the clink. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Well, you can't have those. I'm like, it's like white and chalky. It wasn't even a neat shed. And they said, well, if you go through, we're going to confiscate it, blah, blah, blah. You're going to have a charge for wildlife violation on your record, or you can return it to where you found it in Mexico. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. Turns out I'm going back to Mexico. So, of course, I
remember we were on the phone for one of those, and you're like, oh, man, I think I'm getting arrested.
Never fails. Never fails. I turned around and went back into Mexico. I didn't go very far, and I handled out the window. Some guy walking on, hey, regalo, present. You want a present? I gave it away and turned around and came on through. But that was just one of them. I've got a really funny one, though, when we had a guy had some psychological issues that was hunting with us that we were guiding. And this one was even better because he killed a deer on the very, very first day. And the first night, we're having a great time in camp. The best part about this is our office staff had been calling me. I'm the camp manager, saying, hey, I want you to take this guy because he's a troublemaker, all leading up to it. And when he got in camp, I'm like, oh, no, he's great. This other guy's actually kind of been a headache. I'm going to take him. Well, sure enough, she was right. I'm just going to say she was right. I'm not sure I do that enough, but I'm going to tell you she was right. And anyway, this guy, he got his deer, and that first night after that, he probably drank too much, and I don't know what it set off, but he had some bad problems. So the following day, we ended up taking him. We're trying to get him back to Tucson and get him to the airport so that he can fly home. And it's probably a 2.5 hour drive from where our camp is back up to Tucson. And my boss, Justin, had sent a text and said, hey, turn your phone recorder on because there was some stuff going on. if any of you know about InReach, we call it the ripcord. You can put an SOS button. That SOS, if you pay for the service, goes to Homeland Security. Just keep that little mental note. Wow. That's in Washington, D.C., by the way. When you push that button, they'll come get you no matter. And I'm telling you, it works. They'll come get you where in a different country, whatever. That SOS on the InReach is pretty good. So anyway, the conversations were being recorded. We pull up to the border, and this was a fun one because, we don't know what's going on. We know there's some phone calls coming, and there was a lot of stories I could get into, but I'm going to skip all the stories on the way up. But one time the client was like, oh, yeah, we're in a white Dodge. Yeah. And then we get to the border and we look out, and there's like people walking along the side of us. There's some military guys, no big deal. And then there's like 4 of them. Thinking, well, that's kind of weird because they're just staying. And that line, if you've ever crossed the border, it can be slow. And so it kind of looked funny. We get about 3 or 4 cars away and the doors fling open and everybody gets jerked out and thrown on the ground and back to that little room that I've been to it. So it's kind of familiar for me. Separated, cell phones, stripped down. I mean, it was just say it was a big deal. And about 8 hours later, when we finally convinced the guards or the Homeland Security to give us back our phones to show them the recordings that we had, they let us go and said, yeah, you don't talk to the other guy. Don't worry about him. And you guys are separate from here. Anyway, that was kind of a fun story. 8 hours getting interrogated by Homeland Security just to find out that we're trying to get this guy some help. So, yeah, I've spent my fair share. I've spent my share dealing with those kind of issues. Just kind of fun, though. Just nothing ever comes of it. I'm too clean.
Well, looks like we've run through our time.
What a fun episode. Hopefully we don't wear people out. This one might have got a little long, but special thanks to Skyler. And I'm going to get back up to the rodeo.
Yes, you are. Well, there you have it, folks. We're just 2 regular dudes that are trying to do something good in our community. We hope you guys will keep reaching out to us and let us know your questions. And hopefully this will be something that you guys get some good information from about the things that are going on in northern Utah County, Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs area. Everybody have a great week.
And there you have it.